everyone. I'm Fun here, and today I'll be talking about this paper, Neurodivergence, Neurotypes in Ant Colonies and the Mathematics of Collective Consciousness. So this paper was written by here Pablo Cohen, and he sent this paper to me. So I did a video on a paper he did about artificial intelligence being discovered, not created. So it's also on this channel, and I really, really like him because like his researches are usually very interconnected. So here the abstract says that the proposed that scouts or explorer ants documented in myrmecological literature represent a distinct neurotype rather than a transient behavioral role, a phenomenon functionally analogous to neurodivergence in humans. So here they are trying to like show neurodivergence in other types of species, and in this specific context is ants. So scout or explorer ants, these are these random ants you just find. It's just one singular ant, like they're not moving with other people. It's just one ant, which I have always been curious about. So here we can see his interconnected research thing. So he said this work bridges three traditionally separate disciplines, myrmecology, complexity science, and consciousness studies through a single mathematical framework. And I just started learning algebra because of this specific thing. Like when you go deeper in research, you start to see that mathematics shows up constantly, constantly, constantly. A constant actually. But yeah, it shows up constantly. So at some point you actually have to really dive into it. So introduction, the study of individual variation in ants' behavior has revealed consistent differences among colony members that persist over time. Of particular interest are scout or explorer individuals whose foraging patterns deviate markedly from the pheromone following behavior typical of most workers. So, prior literature characterizes these individuals functionally as innovators who discover new food sources, but does not address whether such behavioral differences reflect stable neurological variation analogous to neurotypes, right? So let's go here. Notes on complexity observe that a small number of divergent ants are most likely to find the next food source positions. Are we listening? That it's this forager or scout ants that would most likely find the new food source. I don't remember of a meme. Was it a meme or like a running joke on social media? Something about putting like a cube of sugar and then a singular ant finds it and then taking it away when the other ants come through and they're like, they don't trust him. So I think this is what is going on there. So yeah. Yeah, here we go to the mathematical part that's when we we're more we'll get there. Um yes, theoretical background. So about the complexity theory and ant colonies. So there were four fundamental principles governing complex adaptive systems, which are the individuals follow simple rules. Interactions are local, not centrally coordinated. Small perturbations can cascade into large effects. Novel patterns emerge that cannot be predicted from individual behavior. Are we sensing some similarities, yeah, between these and neurodivergence in adults? So the existence of divergent ants, that is those not following established trails. These are ants that are not following the path that others have already followed. It is essential to the system. Without explorers discovering new resources, the colony would exhaust local food sources and perish. Yeah. So thesis insight is that the colony requires both conformist trail followers and non-conformist explorers to function optimally. So we need neurotypicals and neurodivergents. We work together as a team. Yeah. So yeah, there's also a part about medical care and collective intelligence, which I found very interesting. So they call this species of ants Megaponera analis ants, perform wound treatment on injured nestmates. How interesting is that? For leg treatments, treatment depends on injury location. femur injuries, ants amputate the affected limb and the survival rate is 90 to 95%. Tibia injuries, ants clean the wound but do not amputate. Survival rate approximately 75%, probably from infection or something. Imagine if they have antibiotics. I would not be surprised if they have some form of antibiotics that they use. This differential treatment represents diagnostic decision making at a collective level. No individual ant decides on amputation versus wound care. The appropriate treatment emerges from local interactions. This finding extends the complexity framework. Collective intelligence includes not just navigation and foraging, but also medical care. So you can see it's being used in all systems of their. I always found like ants and bees very similar because of the way they worked with collective knowledge and collective good. So that's something interesting. So let's keep moving down. You guys should really check out this paper though. It's very interesting. So we have behavioral consistency evidence, consistent individual variation, colony level personality, heritability, animal personality literature. This is a very interesting stuff. So functional analogy to human neurodivergence. This is the part most of us have been waiting for. So we draw a functional analogy, not a claim of homology, between ant neurotypical variation and human neurodivergence. The parallels are structural rather than mechanistic. So the first one that we're going to look at is pattern recognition. Pattern recognition is enhanced in many autistic individuals, and in ant explorer neurotype, erratic paths may encode complex maths. Social integration, often challenging in human neurodivergence, and most of them just mask. Ants explorer neurotype returns to colony after exploration, so they always go back home. Energy expenditure, they have the high cognitive load and burnout risks in human neurodivergence. However, in ant explorer neurotype, there is potential post-exploration exhaustion. How similar is that? Group value, innovation, novel perspectives. This is seen in human neurodivergence, while in ant explorer neurotype, there's discovery of new resources. So proportion of human neurodivergence is estimated to be 15 to 20% of the human race that are neurodivergent, while ant explorer neurotype is small minority of foragers. So it's just analogies, it's not confirmed. But I really, really like this, like breakthroughs that come from asking questions, not from knowing the exact answer. So the more we ask questions, the more we look into things we never used to look at, the higher probability we have of discovering something new. So the initial observation in these ants, I think that was the beginning. Yes, the observational evidence. So this is the story of what happened. The field observation is in the Villages, Florida, on the night of December 6 to 7, 2025, at approximately 3 a.m. EST, the author observed foraging patterns by small black ants, likely monomorium minimum or similar species, at a residential location. So the initial observation was that the solitary ants exhibited marked erratic patterns, inconsistent with typical pheromomal trail following. So the patterns included rapid circular patterns, frequent direction reversals, no apparent attraction to existing trails, high apparent energy expenditure. So initial interpretation suggested possible illness or disorientation. However, subsequent behavior contradicted this hypothesis. So this is so similar because, like, imagine a typical neurodivergent person. They just start doing doing a random thing, and then they don't follow what others have done, and they get very innovative, and then they get very tired too. So it's possible to assume, okay, this person is probably anxious, maniac, schizophrenic, and all those other kind of disorders. But over time, you start to see that there is a method to their madness. Then the contact event, approximately at 2:45 a.m., 2 additional ants emerged from the colony entrance, positioning approximately 3 inches from it. Upon their appearance, the erratic ants immediately ceased chaotic movements, He made a direct beeline, not towards the hive entrance, but towards the two newly emerged ants. Physical contact occurred. Only after this contact did the erratic ants proceed into the colony. The two contacted ants began navigating the area the erratic ant had covered. The directional specificity is significant. The explorer's first priority upon seeing nestmates was information transfer, not return. The contacted ants moved calmly through what would have been a complex pheromone landscape created by the explorer's yarn ball trajectory. So you can see here, I think in an ant colony, they appreciate their differences and they understand their roles. So they're not competing for the same type of role. Like neurotypical ant is not going to say, I can't discover new food sources. I'm terrible at my work. But yeah. So this is appreciation of how I think this actually giving me more details into how ant colonies work. I haven't seen it from this level of perspective, like this in-depth perspective. So I really appreciate this paper. So computational validation, of course. I really love that I am in the age where charts and graphical representations of data are common because this really stimulates me and helps me understand what is going on. Fitness evolution. Again, you guys should really check out this paper. It's really cool. So there's a graph I saw. Yes, this is a graph that I really wanted to show in this video. So the red line indicates the neurodivergent explorers. The blue lines are the neurotypical trail followers. The star is the food source, and the red square is the nest. So you can see the nest is in the center, and then the circular pattern. So you can see it moves like kind of zigzag circular patterns, and then somehow discovers the food sources, food source, and then the neurotypicals are moving all around. So this kind of gives you like a visual representation of the story that happened. The one with the ants leaving the colony and meeting the two ants at the door. So yeah, quite interesting. Also here again, collective consciousness. I think we should actually look at collective consciousness, just not on ants level, but also like, okay, there was a newsletter I wrote about studying the ecology in your space, like in your room, in the area you live at, like studying that. So collective consciousness keeps coming up. And what if like you have collective consciousness with everything living around you? Do you understand? So your actions can influence their actions, and their actions can also influence your actions. However, being aware of this process gives you some kind of like creative freedom to do as you wish. So yeah, conclusion. And then this was an independent research done without external funding. And really cool paper. Guys, check it out. Thank you so much for joining and listening to the end. Yeah. Remember we have our Obsidian service up, and I hope to hear from you guys soon. Bye.